Listen carefully, because this may be the most important truth you'll ever hear about your own life. Your greatest battles are not fought in the world around you, they're fought in the world within you. Every limitation you face, every habit you struggle with, every fear that whispers in your ear, all of it begins in one place, the mind. If you cannot conquer your thoughts, you will never conquer your life. But the moment you take control of your mind, the moment you choose to rule it, everything around you begins to bow to that authority. So today, I challenge you not to fix your world first, but to fix the world within. Because when the mind is mastered, destiny is inevitable. You see, the greatest battlefield on earth is not in the nations, not in the streets, not in the boardrooms of the powerful. It's right between your ears. The mind is the territory where destinies are either built or buried. Every war you fight externally is simply a reflection of the one you've already lost or won internally. You don't lose in life because of people. You don't fail because of systems. You lose because your thoughts surrendered long before your body ever did. The mind is your headquarters. It's where your beliefs are formed, your fears are fed, and your faith is either ignited or extinguished. And whoever owns the territory of your mind owns your future. So the question is, who's in control up there? Who is ruling your thoughts? Are you the master or the prisoner? Because make no mistake, if you don't manage your mind, something else will. Fear will. Doubt will. Past experiences will. And before you know it, your life begins to mirror the chaos you never took time to conquer within. Your thoughts are seeds. Every thought you water grows into a reality. You think failure long enough, and you'll create failure. You think limitation long enough, and you'll live limited. But you think power, purpose, and potential, and your life begins to align with that vision. That's why the mind is not just a gift, it's a responsibility. It was never meant to run on autopilot. It was meant to be governed. Listen, control of the mind doesn't start with shouting affirmations. It starts with awareness. Awareness that you are in charge of what enters and what stays. You are the gatekeeper. You decide which thoughts deserve to build a home in your head and which ones must be evicted immediately. Because every tolerated thought becomes a tenant, and tenants eventually take ownership. That's why the greatest leaders, the most disciplined people, the most spiritually powerful individuals are not the ones who control others, but the ones who control themselves. They've learned the art of silence, the power of stillness, and the strength of choosing their thoughts with intention. They understand that peace is not the absence of noise, it's the mastery of thought in the middle of it. You see, until your mind submits to your vision will never manifest. You can pray, you can plan, you can prepare, but if your thoughts are still contradicting your purpose, your results will betray your efforts. The body follows the mind, and the mind follows what it's fed. So today, decide what you will feed your mind, because the war for your destiny will never be won with weapons in your hands. It will be won with discipline in your thoughts. When you rule your mind, you rule your world. When you conquer the inner territory, every outer territory bows in response. And that is where the real transformation begins. Because the next battle you must face is not about the mind you control, but the voice that shapes it. Every human being lives with a voice inside their head. You know it well. It speaks when no one else is around. It whispers when you try to sleep. It reminds you of what you lost, what you fear, and sometimes what you could become. That voice is not always your enemy, but it can be, because that inner voice is the architect of your destiny. It builds or breaks you long before life ever touches you. You see, your life does not move in the direction of your dreams. It moves in the direction of your thoughts. And your thoughts are shaped by that constant inner conversation. The moment you start believing the voice that says you can't or you're not enough, you begin to live beneath your potential. You begin to accept boundaries that were never placed by your Creator but built by your conditioning. So the question is not whether you hear voices in your head. The real question is, who programmed them? Who gave them the power to speak with such authority? Was it your past, your pain, the people who said you'd never make it? Somewhere along the way, someone planted a script inside your mind. And now that script runs automatically, guiding your actions, shaping your choices, limiting your faith. But here's the truth. If your inner voice can be programmed by pain, it can also be reprogrammed by purpose. You have the power to rewrite the script. You can change the narrative. You can silence the noise of your past and replace it with the sound of destiny, because your mind believes whatever it hears consistently. If you feed it fear, it produces failure. But if you feed it truth, it creates transformation. Listen closely. You were never meant to be a victim of your thoughts. You were designed to be the author of them. You can choose what your mind repeats. You can command your inner voice to align with your vision. You can train your thoughts to serve your future instead of sabotaging it. The moment you change the language of your inner world, your outer world will start to obey. It's not enough to silence negativity. You must replace it with conviction. You must speak what you seek until you see what you said, because every declaration becomes a design. Every affirmation becomes architecture. Every thought you plant becomes the fruit you'll later taste. So, if your mind has been echoing doubt, rewrite the echo. If it's been rehearsing fear, reprogram it with faith. Don't let the wrong voice guide your life another day. You have authority to choose the frequency you live on. Tune your mind to purpose, and the sound of power will follow. And when that inner voice finally aligns with your destiny, something begins to shift, because the next stage of mastery is not only hearing the right voice, but learning how to command it. Every mind is a kingdom. It has a throne. It has laws. It has citizens called thoughts. And whoever sits on that throne determines the destiny of that kingdom. Your mind was designed to be ruled, governed, and directed by purpose. But if you don't take that seat of authority, something else will. Fear will sit there. Insecurity will sit there. The voices of the past will crown themselves rulers in your mental territory. You were never meant to be a servant in your own mind. You were created to be the king over it. Because where there is no rule, there is rebellion. Where there is no order, chaos reigns. And for many people, their greatest struggle is not with life, it's with the anarchy within. Their thoughts are undisciplined, their emotions are ungoverned, and their mind becomes a nation divided against itself. But hear this carefully. The strength of any kingdom is determined by the strength of its government. If you cannot govern your thoughts, you cannot govern your actions. If you cannot lead your mind, you cannot lead your life. That's why discipline is not punishment, it's protection. Every decision to guard your mind is a declaration that you refuse to be ruled by anything less than destiny. Think of your mind as royal territory. Every thought is a citizen applying for entry. You decide who stays, who goes, and who gets promoted to influence. Negative thoughts may knock, but they don't have to be welcomed. Fear may visit, but it doesn't have to be entertained. Because whatever you allow to live in your mind will eventually build its palace in your reality. You see, when you understand your authority over your thoughts, life begins to shift. Circumstances no longer control you. People no longer define you. Emotions no longer dictate you, because you've established order within. The mind that once ruled you now serves you. The thoughts that once imprisoned you now empower you. But ruling your mind is not a one-time event, it's a daily declaration. Every morning, you rise and choose to sit on that throne again. You choose peace over panic, vision over distraction, discipline over comfort. You remind your thoughts who the ruler is, because your mind will always test you to see if you're still in charge. And when you fail to lead it, the consequences are subtle but deadly. Anxiety takes command, confusion becomes law, doubt becomes currency. Suddenly, you find yourself living in a kingdom where you no longer have a voice. But when you reclaim that throne, when you restore order, your life begins to reflect the authority you've established within. So, rule your mind with conviction, guard it with truth, and govern it with wisdom. For when the kingdom of the mind is rightly ruled, every other kingdom must bow in response. Because the next level of mastery is not just ruling the mind, but training it for battle. Every human being was born limitless, but somewhere along the way, limits were taught, spoken, and accepted. You weren't born doubting yourself, you learned to. You weren't created to fear, you were conditioned to. And now, many live not by the truth of who they are, but by the boundaries of what they've been told they can't be. Your mind, if left untrained, becomes a prison with invisible bars. You can see the dream, but you can't reach it. You can feel the potential, but you can't express it. And the tragedy is, most people never realize that the walls around them were built from their own thoughts, because every limitation you believe becomes law in your life. If your mind says, I can't, your body obeys. If your mind says, it's impossible, your spirit retreats. But here's the truth. There are no real limits in life, only mental ones. And mental limits are self-made. You cannot rise above the ceiling you set in your own mind. That's why true freedom does not begin with opportunity, it begins with awareness. Awareness that what holds you back is not the mountain ahead, but the mindset within. Listen carefully. The most dangerous prison in the world is not made of stone or steel. It's made of thought. It's the mindset that whispers, you're not enough. It's the belief that says, people like you don't succeed. It's the internal dialogue that convinces you to shrink when life demands that you stretch. But when you begin to challenge those thoughts, when you start to speak differently to yourself, the walls begin to crack, the prison begins to shake, and your mind starts to remember who it really is: powerful, creative, limitless. You were never designed to live beneath your potential. You were designed to exercise dominion over every part of your being, especially your mind. Dominion means authority. It means mastery. It means taking control of the direction your thoughts travel and commanding them to align with your destiny. Because when your mind submits to your purpose, there is no limit to what you can achieve. So, stop asking life for permission to become great. Life will never hand you freedom, it responds to those who command it. Start declaring what you believe. Start visualizing what you see within. Start living as if the boundaries have already broken. Because the mind cannot resist a vision that's being spoken with conviction. And hear this: every time you choose faith over fear, you expand your mental territory. Every time you believe again, despite disappointment, you stretch your capacity for greatness. Every time you say, I will, when everything around you says you can't, you step further into your power. The only limits that exist are the ones you allow to remain. Break them challenge them, redefine them. Because your mind was never meant to live in captivity, it was meant to reign in freedom. And once that freedom is found, the next battle begins. Not just breaking limits, but mastering the laws that govern them. Everything in life operates by law. The universe functions by law. Success responds to law. Even your thoughts, yes, the quiet whispers in your head are governed by laws. And whether you know it or not, those laws are working for you or against you every single day. Because the mind does not care who controls it. It simply obeys whoever gives it the strongest command. If your thoughts are disciplined, your life will be directed. But if your thoughts are undisciplined, your life will be distracted. The mind is like fertile soil. It produces whatever seed is planted. Plant doubt, you'll harvest defeat. Plant faith, you'll reap power. Plant fear, and your life will begin to manifest everything you're afraid of. That's the law of thought. You see, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you think, because your thoughts are magnetic. They send out frequencies pulling toward you the very experiences that match your inner dialogue. That's why you can't afford to think casually. Casual thinking leads to accidental living. Intentional thinking leads to purposeful living. The law of thought was designed to serve you, but it will also enslave you if you misuse it. Listen carefully. Your mind is not loyal to your dreams. It's loyal to your patterns. Whatever you repeat, it reinforces. That's why change is hard, because the law of thought defends the familiar. It protects what you continually feed it. So if you keep feeding it fear, it will guard fear as truth. But if you begin to feed it faith, consistency, and purpose, it starts rewriting its own laws to serve your vision. That's why success isn't about talent, it's about training. You must train your mind to obey your purpose. You must command it, correct it, and cultivate it until thinking right becomes natural. Because once the law of thought is mastered, life begins to move in harmony with your decisions. Your mind stops resisting your goals and starts reinforcing them. It becomes your ally, not your adversary. But when you neglect that law, when you let emotions take the driver's seat, you hand your power over to chaos. You begin reacting instead of creating. You begin surviving instead of leading. And slowly, the master becomes the servant, and the servant becomes the master. Your own mind begins to rule you with the very fears you once refused to confront. So today, ask yourself, who's in charge of your thinking? Have you trained your mind to serve you, or has it trained you to settle? Because every thought you allow is a seed that determines what grows next in your life. You cannot plant weeds and expect fruit. You cannot sow confusion and expect clarity. The law doesn't change. It only reflects what you choose. Rule your mind with principle. Govern your thoughts with truth, and your life will begin to operate in divine order. Because the next dimension of mastery is not just about controlling the law of thought, but learning how to apply it to every area of your life. There comes a moment in every life when the noise becomes too loud. The thoughts, the fears, the expectations, they all start colliding in the mind like waves in a storm. You try to focus, but your thoughts pull you in 10 different directions. You try to find peace, but peace feels like a stranger. You're living, but not leading. You're breathing, but not balanced. And deep down, you know, this storm isn't outside of you, it's inside. The truth is, chaos doesn't begin in your environment, it begins in your head. Confusion doesn't start in your circumstances, it starts in your thoughts. You can't control the winds of life, but you can control the captain of the ship, your mind. because the mind determines direction. It decides whether you sail or sink. And the storm only wins when the captain forgets his authority. You were never meant to be tossed by every wave of worry or driven by every gust of fear. You were designed to rule your mental atmosphere. But somewhere along the way, you let anxiety become your weather and doubt your climate. You allowed emotions to rewrite your reality. And now, your mind feels like a battlefield with no peace treaty in sight. But hear me, peace is not the absence of storms. It's the mastery of calm within them. It's when you learn to anchor your thoughts, even when everything around you is uncertain. It's when you stand still on the inside, even when life is shaking on the outside. Because clarity doesn't come from escaping the storm, it comes from speaking to it. You must take authority over your inner world. You must rise and declare, "Peace, be still." You must remind your mind that it is not the storm, it is the space through which the storm passes. When you stop identifying with the chaos loses its power over you. When you stop feeding confusion with fear, confusion begins to starve. And that's where clarity begins, when you choose silence over panic, faith over fear, and order over noise. When you realize that control isn't about stopping the rain, but learning to dance through it without losing your rhythm. Because clarity is not found by chance, it's created by choice. The mind becomes peaceful when it finally understands who is in charge. So today, take back command of your inner sea. Calm your thoughts, still your fears, and speak order into your mental storm. Because when your mind finds peace, your life finds power. When your thoughts align with truth, your world begins to follow. And when you control the storm within, no storm outside can ever control you. Now hear this, the greatest victory is not found in what you conquer around you, but in what you conquer within you. For when your mind is clear, your path becomes visible. When your heart is steady, your future becomes reachable. And when peace becomes your posture, power becomes your presence. Rule your mind, command your thoughts, silence the storm, and let clarity lead you to destiny.